Americans rushed to buy new homes in December at the strongest pace in 10 months. But will that positive momentum for the housing market carry through 2016? For answers, I'm joined by Lisa Sturtevant, Executive Director at the Center for Housing Policy. Lisa, the Commerce Department released a lot of promising numbers today. New home sales surged nearly 11% in December. The median price fell more than 4% compared to 1 year ago. What should we take away from all this data?
Well, it is one data point, but there's a lot of good news in this report. I think what this means is that the economy is getting better, incomes are rising, people are becoming more confident about their own economic situations, and when you see the prices falling a bit, you're seeing that there are more and more people who are able to buy a home. So lower priced homes are being sold to people who are now able to get into the market. So all in all, it seems like a good sign for the housing market.
Do the lower prices have anything to do with possibly higher mortgage rates?
I think there's something to be said for the fact that people are getting into the market maybe a little bit sooner than they would have, sort of anticipation of higher mortgage rates, but there's no evidence that the increase in the Fed rate has resulted in a depression in the home prices.
Now, meanwhile, Freddie Mac released its multi-index market index. It says the housing market is sitting on the outer range of stable housing activity. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a really interesting index that they put out, and it's this composite index of local housing market conditions. So it looks at things not only like sales and prices, but also mortgage originations and refinancing. And it puts all that stuff together for states and metro areas around the country. And it compares the current conditions with long-term trends. So when the markets are stable, it means that the current picture is looking like it looks in past stable markets. And so being on the outside edge of stability means that there are some places across the country that still haven't recovered fully, but that more and more states and metro areas are moving into that stable area.
How do you think the Federal Reserve's latest statement on interest rates will impact the housing market?
Yeah, so the increase in rates last year, people talked about whether they'd have an impact on the housing market. They won't immediately, and there's a lot of evidence that there's so much pent-up demand that the impact will be more to move people into buying earlier rather than any sort of significant impact in a negative way on the housing market. So you might see more activity earlier in the winter and spring where people are concerned that rates might increase in the future, but overall it wouldn't have a big impact in 2016.
Lisa, this week Fortune.com published a survey of the least affordable housing markets in 9 countries. Hong Kong broke the record and 4 U.S. cities made the top 10, all of them in California. Surprisingly, the survey determined housing in the United States was the most affordable of those 9 countries. Where are the soft spots here? What's missing?
Yeah, I saw that report. It's a little bit tricky to compare home affordability across countries. So I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to compare us to, say, Hong Kong. But the fact that some California cities were just as pricey as some of the most expensive places across the country is indicative of the economies in those places really on the mend and demand for
San Francisco's always up there, Silicon Valley, right?
San Jose, but even places on the East Coast that may not have been in the top 10, New York, Boston, even Washington, D.C. These are places that have seen home prices on the rise in the last few years.
Now, this is our first interview of 2016, so I'd like a recommendation or two. How can lawmakers make the housing picture better in the year ahead? What needs to happen?
Well, I think there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen in terms of the federal role in the home mortgage market. And so I think it's important that there's this balanced approach to managing risk on the home finance side, but also making sure there's opportunity for people who are qualified to get home loans. And on the rental side, just being able to expand the supply of rental housing through the low-income housing tax credit and through local and state policies that really incentivize the production of affordable rental housing. More supply means that rents will be lower.
We've talked before, Lisa, about the millennials. They don't see things as differently as the older Americans. They're looking more to rent instead of buy. They're looking for different places to live, urban areas as opposed to the suburbs. How do you view the millennial issue right now as far as housing?
Yeah, I think there's some difference in preferences among millennials, but I think the bigger difference is economic. I think they were hit particularly hard by this economic downturn, and while they're not buying homes at rates as fast as prior generations were, it's not that they don't want to. It's just that they're not able to save up for the down payment in the way that other generations were. So I'm thinking over the next few years, you're going to see millennials starting to look an awful lot like Gen Xers and prior generations in terms of home ownership, and frankly, in terms of moving to the suburbs.
Oh, so you don't think they're going to be glued to the city like Georgetown, Clarendon, Ballston, Roslyn, as we think in terms of the younger generation, you still think they're going to be suburbanites like everybody else who wants the affordability?
Yeah, you'll check back with me in 5 years, but I think when this population starts marrying and having children, we're going to start to see some of those same trends.
Yeah, I think you're right. They'll get bigger bang for their buck by being farther out, and if they're closer in and have the money, more power to them too. All right, Lisa Sturtevant, Executive Director at the Center for Housing Policy. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.